You can see light, the third eye, when the third eye is activated. Let me tell you a little story. Amarita was madly in love with her spiritual master, and she had been with him first probably a year or two, and she was going through a Kundalini ascension, and she decided to go to India and go to Mahashivratri. For some of you who don't know what is Mahashivratri, it's a grand festival of celebrating the divine and Shiva, what we call Shiva, which only means that which that is not. You could look at it as the source. It's a celebration because the spheres, celestial spheres, the way they align is very conducive for the energy to elevate into your system. So Amrita went to Mahashivratri and she had bought some raw chocolate vegan for her master. And right before he went to take the stage, she decided, she was really close to him, and she decided to go bow down and express her devotion and her surrender and her love, because she was so in love with him and so much devotion. And she just ran and went at his feet. And when she bowed down, he turned and she offered a chocolate, and he was getting ready for the stage. And he just went, no! In my entourage, so many of my followers and everyone I see, they're so lost on the spiritual awakening and on their growth and on the path. Unnecessary suffering because they don't know what's happening to them. So in this episode, we're going to look at the three main mystical occurrences of what happened after a spiritual awakening. And stay tuned and pay really attention, because there might be some new concept for you, beloved, that you never heard of before. And so what is the first mystical occurrence? Some of you are familiar with the Kundalini ascension. And if you don't know, there's some video here, some other episode you can watch, but we'll go over it a little bit into what it is. But what's most important is what is associated with a Kundalini ascension. They are spontaneous kriya. And the spontaneous kriya, this is where a lot of people get really scared, don't understand what's going on. They think they're going insane. They suffer unnecessarily. Family members suffer unnecessarily because they don't know, they're not aware. And so Kundalini ascension, in one sentence, it is the primordial energy that is going through the 7 main chakra. In Becoming the Light Inner Journey Mastery Program, Devi Ma goes in depth into all the different phases and what it is. What is the subtle body? We have 114 chakra, but when you go through the Kundalini ascension, Kundalini is synonymous to Shakti. Shakti Ma, what we call, or the Divine Mother. It just means the divine feminine energy, the primordial energy. So when it's activated, it pierces through the main 7 chakra. And so the whole spiritual process is from the Muladhara, the base, at the root of the sacrum, all the way up to the last chakra, the 114 above your head, the Saraswara. And each time the energy pierces through, there is an opening of a new chakra. Let's say your Anahata, your Vishuddhi, you experiencing life differently. So depending on your karmic structure, depending on your receptivity, your devotion, your surrender, your openness, your sense of vulnerability, And if you're walking the spiritual path, extremely important if you do sadhana, like I have said in other episodes, pranayama, meditation, hatha yoga, all of this sadhana, which I talk in depth in other episodes, that accelerate your spiritual process and your Kundalini ascension. So when you're experiencing a Kundalini ascension, is most likely you will experience spontaneous kriya. Spontaneous kriya are natural or mystical occurrences. They happen spontaneously. That's why they call spontaneous. Kriya means action, an internal action. Is Ma Shakti, the Divine Mother, or you could say the primordial energy comes and know what to purify. So through the spontaneous kriya, it's just simply a purification, getting rid of your accumulation, conditioning, especially your entanglement. And so let's talk about what are the different forms of spontaneous kriya. There are many. The first one, the major one, is sobbing and screaming and intense mourning, not knowing why, trembling of the body, shaking of the body, chirping, speaking in tongue, in different ancient languages, and doing some acrobatic asana, and doing certain mudra. Remember, this is all mystical occurrences, and they are purifying your subtle body, all the samskara, the impression, and the vasana, the tendency that I have talked about that many times. That is what is basically the karmic structure. So, and you could be also chanting certain mantra, not knowing, because it's spontaneous. I know for this one, when I went through the Kundalini ascension, was so incredibly intense, beyond words, speaking in tongue, trembling, convulsion on the ground, shaking, beating. I would get completely black and blue on my thigh. And it's hard to control, and it can be dangerous if you're not guided properly. So not everyone will experience the same. Spontaneous kriya, some of you might be chirping like a bird, could be meowing like a cat, can be crawling on the ground like a snake. You could smell some aura of otherworldly smell. You could have vision of certain deity or vision. For this one, I would go into such trance, and speaking in tongue was so powerful. And I would go in a trance where I would be fully conscious and aware of what's happening, but you cannot control it. So Devi Ma said, I've seen it. No need to be scared if someone is in a trance like that, or putting judgment on them, or for even you if you go through that. And don't expect them, because not necessarily everyone will have them. They can be in a milder form. For this one was a huge fury. But I always felt like it's important to share that in the world. And Muktiananda talked about that, Swami Muktiananda, because so that way you know that they exist if they do happen. Don't attach yourself to them. If they come, let them happen. Don't think you're going crazy or insane. So much more about that in our program, Becoming the Light Inner Journey Mastery Program. And the second one, the second sign, what is the second sign of a mystical occurrences is samadhi. Samadhi just means a state of equanimity, a state of no mind, a state of complete immersion into an expansion of consciousness. It's hard to put into words unless you have experienced that. And there are different kinds of samadhi. We won't go into all of them. There is an episode video on that and the danger of The great danger of samadhi and the phenomenal blessing and benefit of samadhi, you can see that on Sri Devi Mayi Ma channel, one that definitely you should watch. There are 3 different kinds of main samadhi, and those are the most important. The first one is swaja samadhi. Swaja, I won't go in depth now, but just to give you an idea, it's like you can be functioning in the world, be fully conscious and active, and be in a state of complete equanimity, of pure bliss. You're experiencing your divine presence. And there is nirvikalpa samadhi, where your eyes are closed and you go into a deep state where you completely become one and merge as one with the cosmos. And you could be days into this and no one should touch you. More about this in the video. And the third one, the nirvikalpa, is a very intense one. And those state of samadhi, they just are indicating that you're making great progress on your evolutionary, and you're vibrating at a different level, that you have got rid of a lot of accumulation. What Devi Ma talks about, karmic structure is all the accumulation from dysfunctional family, of being codependent, all the compulsion, all the entanglement, the conditioning, the false sense of self we talked about in a previous video on the 6 breathtaking signs and phases of spiritual awakening. And if you haven't watched that, beloved, watch it, because it's very insightful. Ego, there is no death of ego, but it is of purification, of letting go of all those false sense of self, of identification, of ego identification. And so samadhi, the third one, I have experienced that one very often and still do. And that one is after you have passed the stages of Kundalini ascension and of especially the spontaneous kriya, because my spontaneous kriya were insane, and it actually scared my ex-husband to a point. Today we're not together anymore, and I see that so often in the world where people are going through major awakening and they're so lost. I'm here for you. So if you need help, seek out and come and join. We'll help you, guide you properly on your spiritual path and spiritual awakening. And no need to fear. I can tell you that from my own experience, and I highly recommend you read Becoming the Light, Realize Your True Enlightened Nature, because if you are on a spiritual journey and you are awakening and you're growing, you're evolving, you will find Becoming the Light, my first major book, very insightful, because even though it is a personal journey, yet it's a universal journey. And I go in depth about many aspects of the spiritual journey. So Bhava Samadhi. Bhava Samadhi is a state where a deity comes and you go like in an intense bliss, and it's hard to contain it. And again, those states you can't put into words, you after experiencing that. This happened many times. And you just try to contain it, you know. It's like the divine. A deity can be the Divine Mother, Mahashakti, you know, primordial energy. It doesn't matter, because ultimately it's the creator, because there is only one creator. And all energy comes from that source. It's been said through the science, they have noticed that quantum physics, everything, it's a conscious energy, intelligent energy keeps expanding, taking different form. So the last one, the last major mystical occurrences is mystical experiences of the beyond, When the energy moves in the third eye, in the ajna, especially if it goes into the Sahasrara, the 1,000 lotus petal, is you go in a state of pure ecstasy. I remember for this one, I have been in a certain state where I couldn't even walk. My body was like, I felt like a doll. You know, you just cannot move. You can be in that state. It's a state of bliss that cannot be described into words. You can see light, the third eye, when the third eye is activated. Let me tell you a little story. Amrita was madly in love with her spiritual master. And she had been with him first, probably a year or two. And she was going through a Kundalini ascension. And she decided to go to India and go to Mahashivratri. For some of you who don't know what is Mahashivratri, it's a grand festival of celebrating the divine and Shiva, what we call Shiva, which only means that which that is not. You could look at it as the source. It's a celebration because the spheres, the celestial spheres, the way they align is very conducive for the energy to elevate into your system. So Amrita went to Mahashivratri and she had bought some raw chocolate vegan for her master. And right before you went to take the stage, she decided, she was really close to him, and she decided to go bow down and express her devotion and her surrender and her love, because she was so in love with him and so much devotion. And she just ran and went at his feet. And when she bowed down, he turned and she offered a chocolate, and he was getting ready for the stage. And he just went, no! And he just energetically was just completely pushed her down to the ground. It was so ferocious and so cruel in so many ways, and yet Amrita just fell to the ground. By the Shakti was so strong. And then she just left the chocolate and walked back and sat down and closed her eyes and went in complete samadhi. And her third eye just opened up. And then seeing different light, there's so many different light that you can see, beloved. But again, don't put attachment, don't put expectation there. This is just so you know that you can have experiences of the beyond. And those are signs that you are progressing, but be aware, don't get attached to that. There's so many lights, but the one of the most is the blue pearl, which I have talked many times in past episode in the program, and particularly in Becoming the Light Inner Journey Mastery Program. The blue light is the divine light of consciousness that is like a paxid. It's a beautiful ethereal light that is scintillating, and that it travels to the speed of light, and you can hold it into your meditation. And when I saw it the first time, it was with my own guru in those days, and it was with my eyes open, and it was right above his head. And it was so beautiful and so awe. And so the blue pearl is very significant and is discussed in depth in the program. So that's one example. Another example is having vision of a deity, one that you are completely in devotion and love. It could be anyone. It can be an ascended master. Ascended meaning they're not in the physical body anymore. But the light, the different light, and falling into certain state, this happens so many times. There's so many different kind of mystical experience of the beyond, experiencing a smell, an ethereal smell, hearing a certain chant, a voice that is otherworldly, and so many other that where you develop CD, spiritual CD, their spiritual power, like to be able to have clairvoyance, or there are so many, which I talk again in the program in depth. But for the purpose of this episode is that know that this is a very advanced state where you have realized and got rid of tremendous garbage. And there's so many mystical experiences of the beyond that I talk in the program. But those are the few, and the light that you can see are, you cannot put into words, and so many. And so there are three very powerful mystical experiences, and the most important is the blue pearl. And what is to remember of all of this is, don't expect them, don't get attached, but just know this is what they are. And it may happen, it might not happen in this lifetime, but it doesn't matter. If you stay humble, you stay focused with receptivity and a sense of humbleness, things will happen for you, beloved. And Devi Ma is here for you.